Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my painting On Time and my video part 4. This is a conclusion of a 4-part video showing me painting this particular painting of Lake Galena and Peace Valley. I hope you enjoy it and give it a thumbs up. This is this part where I pull it all together, I hope. Now let's paint. Much of this painting has been developed, including the sky and the middle ground and the foreground. Now what's left for me to work on are the trees in the middle ground and then some final touches. All these trees need their branches developed further. They're just marked out with a trunk at the moment. The side of the tree that's facing the sun, I've used a lot of burnt sienna and an orange coloring to show the sun reflecting on the bark, because that sun was very intense. For the shaded side of the trees, I'm using a lot of purple, and the purple mixing with the burnt sienna is causing a lot of mauve coloring to be developed. I like mauve. Do you like it? Do you use it in your paintings? As I'm painting these branches, I'm looking at my photographic reference, and I'm trying to capture some of the unique configurations of the branches. But if a branch looks odd or doesn't quite work in the composition, I also feel very free not to paint it at all. There is a distant tree line, and as I'm working, I'm seeing a dock that projects out from that tree line onto the lake. And at a certain point, I decided I should paint that dock because it's unique to this park. Here you can see me putting on that bold stroke of burnt sienna. And I've even mixed in a little bit of vermilion. And the tree looks very orange. But then again, consider the sun and consider the sky. Even the earth in this painting was colored gold and orange by that very strong sunlight on it. Another point that I should focus on is that I'm painting the branches with a lot of care. I have fully developed my sky and my very complicated cloud formations. I've softened for many hours. So I'm being careful. What you're seeing here is the beginning of a figure. A friend who had been following the development of my painting said, "Why don't you add a person standing next to those two foreground trees and looking out at that beautiful, beautiful sky?" My reaction was, "That's a great idea." And so I began blocking a person's figure in silhouette. I started with a smaller size than I thought I should have, so I could make it bigger if needed. And I started it very pale. For me, that's the safest way to approach this kind of aspect of watercolor, because it's easier to change. Another friend said, "There's a dock there on Lake Galena, isn't there?" And I said, "Yes, actually it's in the picture, partially hidden by the trees." So that is probably a good idea to add that too. I've seen a lot of artists writing about adding an element of humanity to your landscapes. Now, if a landscape's out in the middle of nowhere, wild mountains or a sea or a seashore with nobody around, that's wonderful and fine. But many people enjoy seeing evidence of men and women in their parks because they themselves like to be there. So putting in a dock or a roof or a figure of a person with an animal or a pet seems to add a little humanity to a painting. And I thought that was probably a very good way to go for this one. What do you think? Always interested in hearing what your ideas are. You could write them in your comments section here. So the dock is on, and that lone figure standing there has been painted into the picture. I think it's time for me to develop some more trees. Here I am continuing to develop the middle tree's branches. I'm using a lot of very orangey colors such as burnt sienna with a touch of vermilion thrown in. And my shading color remains purple at this point. Just the most intense on these particular trees, which are right in the sun. I'm taking a lot of care on these little thin branches and trying to make sure I get them right so I don't mess up my sky. As you can see, I've continued to add some more and more tree branches. Since painting them is not particularly interesting to the viewer, I'm doing a lot of skipping ahead here. Now, one of these trees in this group is a non-deciduous tree. The rest have shed their leaves, but there's one nice tall pine tree. So I begin to develop the foliage on that particular tree. I'm using a mixture of burnt sienna and Hooker's Green Dark. Where I want to darken it a little bit more, I'm adding some indigo. You can probably see I'm using a jaggedy, edgy type of approach to try to convey the needles of this kind of tree. Where the tree is lit by the sun, I'm using more burnt sienna to make an almost army green and capture some of that golden or orange light. When I paint any kind of evergreen tree, I usually try to leave some sky or some light showing through it. If it's really dense, I don't think it's quite as interesting as if it's got some spots of light in it. Because this kind of tree often looks lacy or feathery. I've had some people say, why are you making the tree orange? And I say, well, that's the color of the light shining on it. And in very strong light, you'll see all kinds of colors on trees and on tree trunks and on leaves. But I also tell my artist friends, if you don't like the orange, then when you paint your painting, you don't have to add it. Do what suits you. In this painting, I wanted to play with that strong light that was affecting all of the objects in the composition. I have another theory, and that's that less is more when you start. If you underdevelop what's needed at the beginning, you can always add more. And if you go in very enthusiastically and overdevelop it at the beginning, it's just so much harder to try to take away some of that. And it will affect your cleanness of your color washes as well. So I practice doing less than I think I need and then building up more as it's needed. What do you think? I noticed in my reference photo that there were some areas where sun rays were breaking through. And I realized I really liked that effect they were making. So I decided to add it at this late point simply by painting some light washes of water over the areas I wanted to lighten and then blotting them off with a paper towel. I wasn't trying to make them pure, white, or clean. I just wanted to show that ray of sunlight effect. I don't even know why they were coming straight down like that. But I was painting what I was seeing in the photograph. Again, I'm just painting with clear water and then blotting off the excess paint that I decided to remove. I liked how it looked, so I decided to add a ray coming down onto the ground below. This one is slanted at the right angle to the sun. I don't think it was in the picture, but I thought it might look really nice. So I jumped in. What do you think? Would you have added a ray there? I think it looks appropriate. Did you notice how I just wiped the excess water off there? And that was to make the edges of the ray softer as they move further away from the sun. The edges way up in the foreground and then blending and tying in. This painting has been quite a journey for me of trying to capture this unique light at this beautiful setting. I'm going over the whole thing at this point and trying to decide what needs a little enhancement. And I'm adding some accents and some small details of brightness and darks and colors. A little more shadowing. I brought out some of the depth on the right foreground tree. And now I'm adding just a little bit more dark accent work into the dirt in the road up in front. Darkening the entire lower left side of the road because it's moving further and further away from the sun, just as I did on the right side of the road. Taking a little color out in the sun's path. I'm making the tree shadow a little bit thinner. A lot of artists get to this point and they say, am I done? What needs to be done? It's pretty helpful to ask a friend for an objective opinion at this point. But something I did decide on was deepening that shadow on the left tree side. And I'm using a mixture of purple and indigo. And when I deepen a shadow, I almost always soften the edges of it. And that's what you see me doing as well. So I asked my artistic friend, what do you think I should call this painting? And he said, well, you have a person waiting by a tree, looking at a beautiful, beautiful sky and sun. It could be being looked at from the point of view of a person who just arrived, and they were right on time, going to join his or her dear friend and enjoy that view before the sun went down together. So On Time was the title that we chose. So thanks for the idea, Adam. I'm doing my final evaluations. And you might think it's not even necessary, but something compelled me to just keep working for a little bit longer until it was done. And last, I decided to add a little bit more organization to the composition and saw that there was a post in the ground. So I decided to make several posts just to pull that side together a little bit with some vertical. You know, as posts or fencing goes over a hill, it's got to curve along the contour of the hill, so it looks natural. And don't forget that each post has to have a shadow. If the shadows are going over a curve, they curve too. It's done. I'm signing it, and I hope you like it. I hope you enjoyed my video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and please subscribe. If you get a chance, ring the bell, and you won't miss any future videos. There's some links below for you to check out too if you'd like, and I always appreciate your comments. Keep on painting, and I'll see you next video.